Hello and thank you for watching this. If you get a chance, please hit the like and subscribe button down below as I continue to make new videos on topics that you guys find interesting. And now, on with the show. So in 2024, the camcorder sitting behind me turned 40 years old. The way that I know this is because on the back of the camcorder, there's a sticker which tells me that it was made during the first quarter of 1984. This specific model is the Betamovie BMC 110. This is a Betamax video camcorder, and it was the first camcorder to ever be released in the world. In fact, this was the same camcorder that I used to start this channel with several years ago. On its release in 1983, these machines retailed for $1,500, which is around $4,500 today. Yikes. In its time, the Betamovies sold reasonably well. In fact, this specific model was also sold by Sanyo, Toshiba, and I think Zenith had one as well, which basically had their name slapped on there. Now, I gotta tell you, this is by far not the greatest camcorder. It's very simple on the outside. It's only got a couple tricks. It has a macro zoom lens, 3 inputs for a microphone, an earphone, and a remote control. But what's more notable probably is what's missing. There's no time and date stamp. There's no fade control. There's not even a CRT viewfinder. In fact, it's completely optical. There's also no exposure control, and the white balance has to be set manually. By 1983, many of those features could be found on other separate video camera systems, so it's not like it wasn't an uncommon thing for even back then. Probably the biggest disadvantage of all, though, was the fact that the Betamovie could not play back its own recordings. You needed to have a home Betamax VCR in order to be able to play the tapes which were recorded on it. Spoiler alert, do not buy this camcorder in order to transfer tapes. You will be very disappointed once you realize that there's no actual video out. All it does is record. So don't buy it for playing anything back. It's not going to work. Part of the reason that it couldn't play anything back was because the Betamovie used a very special recording system, and the head drum assembly had to be reduced in size in order to fit inside this very small package. It's actually a real marvel of engineering. The fact that they were able to reduce home video into an enclosed and portable package. Sony was able to squeeze an entire video tube camera and a VCR into a very compact 7-pound or so package. By modern standards, it's kind of bulky and it's more luggable, but you have to keep things in perspective. For consumers in 1983, this machine was a revolution when it came to portable home video. And we take this for granted today, but the truth of the matter is that it all started here with this specific device. As such, this product deserves to be recognized for what it was, which was a true game changer. The era of the dad cam had arrived. Now in the future, I'm going to do a full review of this model and the accessories and its full evolution, which ultimately culminated with the BMC 660. So prior to this machine coming out, video cameras and recorders were purchased both as separate units. One would have a video recorder unit, which was attached via an umbilical cord to a compatible camera. So you'd have this rig, you'd have the recorder shoulder over your shoulder, and then you'd have the camera there, and hopefully you could keep it all together. The fact of the matter, though, was that these kinds of rigs were considerably heavier than having everything in a single package, especially plus the battery and also the tape. The camcorder, though, changed all of that. So the purpose of this entire video is I want to talk to you about the significance of the camcorder and what it really did for our world as a whole. So you see, back in the 1980s, camcorders were a whole new consumer electronic category. For the first time, people could see themselves and their families on TV with both picture and with sound. Now, it's true. Home movies existed before this. 8mm, 16mm, and Super 8 all provided moving pictures for many, many years, going back even to the 1920s. Cameras like the Bell & Howell 240 16mm camera, shown right here, are reliable and hardy machines that can produce exceptional results. In fact, I believe that mine weighs just about the same as the Betamovie itself. In fact, I believe that my Bell & Howell 240 probably weighs close to whatever the Betamovie does. I actually did a review of this specific movie camera, which is an excellent piece of equipment, and that can be found below in the video description. But movie cameras were not without their downsides. You needed to have a separate projector and a screen, plus film, plus the development costs. Added to that, most film reels could only last for about 3 minutes, especially when shot at 16 to 18 frames a second, which was the normal home movie standard. Reels would need to be spliced together for even longer reels. Videotape helped change that. Videographers could make long-form archives of family events or just about anything else. All you had to do was drop the cassette into a VCR and boom, instant playback. What's unique about video is that it allows us to see years gone by and the people that we love as they age and even as they passed on. Camcorders even changed the world a few times. A home videotape shot by George Holliday in 1991 caught the beating of Rodney King on videotape. That specific footage would go on to become one of the earliest viral videos and significantly contributed to the 1992 LA riots. The fall of communism in the Soviet Union and in Eastern Europe was caught on videotape as it happened. Much of that footage being sent back to the Western world, who learned what had happened because of these devices. On a lighter note, camcorders also led to the creation of a 1990s staple, America's Funniest Home Videos. This was, as a kid growing up in that time, this was actually a big deal. My family and I, we would tune in and watch endless blooper reels of just normal people from all across the country for our amusement. Today, it's interesting to think about the contrast with YouTube, which is where we're watching this right now, where people can upload footage of all kinds of things, whether it comes to reviews or home movies or just all sorts of things and content. In a way, camcorders were sort of a time machine. They helped us look back and see others and ourselves as we grew through the lens of the camera. And these devices, they really showed a very special experience. A case in point, my uncle shot many tapes back in the day with his trusty Hitachi full-size VHS camcorder, the VM2200A. I still remember the model number even today. In 1981, he purchased that camcorder at a military base, Royal Air Force Base, Chicksands, near Bedford in England. Watching the tapes he shot years later, I was able to see what I sounded like crying as a baby, that I had an English accent when I was 4 to 5, and even myself having an argument with a dog next door that went on for about a minute. In 1998, my family purchased our very first camcorder after my brother was born. It was a JVC camcorder, a video movie which used the much smaller VHS-C format. I remember marveling at the VHS-C adapter turning these little midget tapes into a full-size, playable tape which could be put in any VHS VCR. Going back through some of these recordings, it's remarkable to see my brother grow and develop from being a baby to walking to talking and really to growing up and becoming his own person. Many years later in 2015, I bought this very Betamovie in Rockville, Maryland in working condition off Craigslist for $75. At the time, it came with a charger, a bunch of manuals, and the original box, which you can see behind me. It must have turned out from doing a lot of market research that they realized that most people were buying these recorders for their children and looking for their families. The guy who I bought this camcorder from used to live in Long Island, New York, and I think that's where his family had it, and they must have used it as well. So it definitely got a different lease on life, and I've actually used it quite a bit in the last 10 years, and it's gone with me on many different trips and really to many different parts of the country. So I guess the question is, how does this machine compare to some of the VHS decks and a lot of the later stuff? Like I said before, it's very, very simple. It's either recording or it's not recording, and there's not really much else in between. There's no iris control. All the features are just about automatic. It uses a tube pickup sensor, which can be a little bit more fragile than a CCD. The picture quality, well, on mine it could probably use a little bit of tweaking, but at the time when it was recording, it did record a very good picture. And like many machines from the era, this one can be a little bit noisy when operating, especially when you're having the stock microphone. Using an external mic, you can definitely get around the operational noise that the machine has. But probably the most amazing thing, and really the reason about doing this entire video, is that after nearly 40 years, this thing still works. It's trekking along just fine. And that's pretty remarkable in a time when we become so used to throwing things away all the time. Sony must have used very good capacitors in these. In fact, many later camcorders which they and other people made, including the BMC 660, really require a full overhaul of just about all the capacitors to be able to use them. Fun fact, if you're looking for a VHS model that doesn't have a lot of capacitor issues, be sure to check out many of the Panasonic models. Panasonic use more higher grade capacitors, and those are less prone to fail. So, big score for the Betamovie 40 years later. I guess Sony had a one-up on that one. So one fun part about using this camcorder today is that Sony made a lot of accessories at the time, which you can actually find online. These include, of course, the special camcorder case, which you can see right behind me over here. You gotta have the case, bro. You gotta have the case. It's part of the whole experience. This very camcorder case here accidentally got run over one time by somebody else's car, and it looks like the case did its job because the case took the damage and the camcorder was fine, and I'm still using the original case. So definitely get one if you can. I bought mine separately, probably for about $30 or $40 just to be able to carry it around, but at the time I thought it was worth it. Other accessories you could get: microphones, which make the sound a lot better. Sony made their own. SEMA also made some as well, which I've used before. I'll do a full review of different kinds of microphones and audio accessories which you can use with this model. Another interesting thing which you can get, a microphone shoe, which would help reduce the pickup of the operational noise, which basically lifts the microphone up probably about 6 inches from over the top, but definitely makes a difference. Other accessories: a remote control with a button on it so that you can sit down and you can record with it. Very useful if doing video interviews or you want to be in the actual video yourself. You can just hit the button and automatically you're there. Also lenses. It has a screw mount part on the lens, which you can add different lenses and bits to. One sad thing is that a lot of later camcorders which I used, especially in the late 1990s, you couldn't really put different lenses and such on them, so you were kind of stuck with what you got. Today, I would say that we are in the post-camcorder age. Camcorders today have been supplanted by new devices and phones and computers. Sure, Best Buy, they've got dad cams and they've got GoPros for sale, but the era of creating a tape, a physical object that contains a piece of the past and a doorway to that world, is largely behind us. Now, as for me, I like making home movie reels, and I actually like making tapes. I think there's something kind of fun about it. And if you're watching this, I'm sure I'm not alone. But there's something very special about taking a machine like this out, which is dedicated to one purpose, out into the world and creating something. There's something very special about capturing a piece of life, something like this, especially when so many days are fleeting. never recorded, never seen again, and never really thought of again. So with that, let's cap off nearly 40 years of the camcorder and take a moment to recognize how a machine like this really helped change the world and make it a much more interesting and fun place to be. Guys, thank you again for watching, and please like and subscribe below if you enjoyed this video. I'll see you in the next one, where I'll provide a more in-depth review of this model and other content. Till then, I'll see you next time.